Okay, Carrie, the event has
Oh,
started, so folks are jumping on the call.
great. Thank you so much. Well, welcome everyone to our next Innovation Hour. We really appreciate you being here and spending your noon hour with us. And today we are serving up a little bit of discussion and storytelling and learning around implementation, which is part of our innovation cycle. And before we get started, we'll just probably wait a minute or two for folks to join. But I want to say thank you to two people on our Research and Innovation Office, one of whom is Michaela Kranz, our Director of Marketing and Communications, who has been truly helpful putting together this webinar and the entire series, and appreciate all of her help getting started today, and to Taylor Schmall, who is our innovation coordinator in a mobility position for the next year that we're really excited about, who will be helping also this afternoon. So thanks again. And I'm Carrie Workman. I work in the Research and Innovation Office. I am the coordinator of our research implementation program and also working on our innovation efforts. So really happy that everybody can join today, and just giving a sense of what our hour will be like. We're going to start with a quick icebreaker question. We're going to just explore and try to define a little bit about implementation, cover some of the basics, which are part of our innovation strategy at MnDOT about innovation and the innovation mindset. We're going to talk about a few resources that help us think about that end destination of implementing something, whether it's a process, whether it's an idea, whether it's a new tool, whether it's a research project. And then we have three individuals from three different areas of MnDOT talking about implementation and what that looks like in their respective work. So I want to really thank Ethan Peterson, who will be sharing his work on an implementation research project that's getting started this year on aesthetic pavement markings. And I want to thank, Tony Kasella and uh, John McClellan. I'm all sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, John, who've been doing also some really wonderful next phase implementation work in a research project that involves first responders and safety in construction areas. They will be sharing the highlights of that implementation. And then we have an implementation discussion and presentation by Glenn Gadbois, who's doing some really wonderful stuff in the area of innovation and consulting with a huge impact in communities. So three projects. Hopefully I'm excited to learn more about those. And then we will have some question and answers after each of our presenters shares, and then some time to wrap up and talk about a little bit about how you might continue to engage with the Office of Research and Innovation. So I am going to hand it to Taylor to do a quick Teams poll. And our question today is, please drop your response into the poll, and it's whether it's true or false, this statement: implementation is a fixed process of putting ideas and research into action. And Michaela, could you tell me when the poll is visible? Because I can't see it on my view.
Yep, Taylor has the poll open
Okay,
and responses are coming in. It looks
perfect.
like 33% have said true, 67% said false.
Okay. Yeah, so let's move to the big reveal. Talking a little bit about implementation. And implementation is a fluid process. So that question of it's a fixed process was kind of a tricky one. Implementation, and I'm sure you'll hear it in the presentations that are coming later in this hour, really involves kind of putting an idea into the field, into a piloting stage, into a process of just trying something. And it tends to be a pretty fluid process, like innovation itself. It's rare that we do it all right the first time. So that's why we're just trying to think about implementation as something that may change as it go, or it may lead to results that were unexpected, which is really part and parcel of the innovation process itself. And really successful implementation, the process usually has ways for people to give feedback. It allows for time to adapt to something, and for people to engage with it, because we're really thinking about implementation from that end user perspective of what will someone's experience of what my implementation be. So tend to thinking of it as a fluid process. And related to that, back to kind of some of the basics that we cover in all of our webinars, connect back to our roadmap for innovation and building an innovation culture at MnDOT, which is our innovation strategy. And one of the key principles in that is really the sense that everyone at MnDOT is an innovator. You can try something new at any time. It could be a small idea in your own personal work that helps you be more effective, or that engages your creativity and allows you to do something new. It could be an idea that, as you'll hear today, some of the ideas that have been implemented have been in the works for over 20 years, of thinking, how could we get to this point? So constantly kind of moving forward with that thinking. And really everyone at MnDOT has the opportunity to be part of our innovation culture. So we define that innovation as using critical and creative thinking to implement ideas that create value for the public we serve. So today we're just kind of grateful to be able to focus a little bit more on that implementing phase. And part of our innovation mindset at MnDOT and within our innovation strategy, and something that we try to really just walk the talk of, is these 3 E's of empathy, thinking about how people will experience and engage with whatever innovation you would like to create or try, giving yourself room for experimentation and giving others room for experimentation, which goes back to that idea of implementation and innovation being fluid processes that have a lot of trial and error involved in them. And the 3E of empowerment, of really making feeling empowered to try something new. Innovation can be really scary and risky sometimes, and we all experience that differently. So really wanting to foster that sense of empowerment and the belief that innovation isn't, even failed innovations are successful. So our innovation work tends to be guided by those 3 E's. And as we start today thinking about implementation, implementation is thought of as one of those last steps in the innovation journey. And one of the things that we often read about it is start with the end in mind. And our speakers today are going to be talking a little bit about that phrase and how that actually played a part in their implementations. But I wanted to just share this quick video, fun video by a grandmaster in chess who's talking about chess strategy and thinking how he thinks about it. So just a couple minutes. Hopefully our video will be able to hear it. It's been taking... Okay.
There is a myth that grandmasters can see 10, 15, 20 moves ahead. And it's a great myth because I'm a grandmaster and it makes me look like a super freaking genius. But the truth is, in just the first 4 moves, there are 318 billion ways you could play. Now, that'd be cool if I could pull that off, but grandmasters just can't. It's too much. So we use different techniques to be able to look ahead. And some of these techniques include chunking, which means taking a group of a chess position and seeing what possibilities can come from just that group, or pattern recognition, which is just going over a lot of positions that look very similarly and extrapolating truths from that. The stepping stone method, which is to take a position, freeze it in your mind, and go from there to guess the next position. But one of my favorites that I love to solve these kind of chess puzzles is called retrograde analysis. And what you do with retrograde analysis is that in order to look ahead, it pays to look backwards. Now, why is this so useful? Well, in chess, it's a very complicated case. You got all these chess pieces, it's 32 pieces, but after 5 moves, the position starts to evolve a little bit. And then the game starts to go on, and you see the chess position get a little simpler and a little bit simpler and less pieces on the board until finally, in this case, a game that I played in a tournament in Foxwoods, it gets to something like this. When great players play, it often gets to something like this. You don't see like some easy early checkmate, grandmasters see through all that stuff. What you see is some end game, something really, really simple. And we like to study things like this, grandmasters do, so that if we get to them, we know how to play them cold, but also so that we can steer the position that's in front of us, the more complex ones you saw earlier, to something this easy, something this simple. So in this way, when you're dead, I already knew like 10 moves ago because I knew where we were going. Now, why is this so effective? Well, it's something about the human mind. The problem with the human mind, we're very logical creatures. So I want you to play along with me a few games. Take a look at this sentence. Now, most of you read it a sentence the second time around and realize that you missed the word the first time around. Your mind is very logical. It proceeds forward. It just ignores anything that breaks with its logical stream. And so you don't see the word the first time, the second the first time you read it. But if you read this sentence backwards, you would automatically catch it. You'd go backwards and then you get to brain, you get to then you say, whoa, there are 2 thes in the sentence. This is a really cool trick for proofreading papers. You know, you're writing a paper and then there's like these silly mistakes. Why are these mistakes in my paper? You read it backwards, you'll catch all of them. All right, let's go on to this problem, an interesting problem. Bacteria that double every 24 hours fill a lake it has infested after precisely 60 days. On what day was the lake half full? Now, a lot of people seeing this problem, they think 30, like, you know, you split it in half. Well, that's not the right answer. And also, people might want to calculate. It's too big, it's math, it's boring, I don't want to do that either. But if you do this problem backwards, you get the answer right away. What's the answer? 59. Obviously, you start at the end, you go backwards. It's like, oh yeah, it's half full. The answer is 59. Here's another puzzle, a little bit more complicated. You have 6 numbers, 1 through 6. The cards are face down. You and I are going to pick a card. You pick a card and you look at it, it says the number 2. I look at my card, I think about it for a minute, and I say, I want to trade. The reason I want to trade, we're going to trade to see who has the highest number at the end. Do you trade with me? Yes. Most people say, of course, I got a 2. 2 sucks. They're 4 numbers higher. Probability says I'm going to do better. Wrong answer. You're playing a grandmaster. You start from the back and you work it out. If I had the number 6, would I offer to trade? Of course not. I'm not dumb. What about the number 5? Probably not either, because you're not going to say yes if you have a 6. Well, if 5's not going to trade and 6 is not going to trade, 4 is going to be like, I'm not trading either because 5 and 6s don't trade. So you see what happens as we work backward. 3 is going to realize 4, 5, and 6, they don't trade. So the offer is definitely a 1. And all of you who said yes, thanks for your money. So this retrograde analysis is used in different places. It's used to prove intoxications hours after an alleged DUI by Pennsylvania police officers, which is kind of cool. Well, it means don't drink and drive. The use of retroanalysis is used in law, science, medicine, insurance, stock market, politics, career planning. But I find its use to be a more interesting place. Maybe one of the most interesting uses is in this movie, which I know a lot of you know, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where Brad Pitt plays a guy who's living his life backwards. And what this movie makes me think of is that great quote that quote you often hear from people who are older, that youth is wasted on the young. Well, if you can see the end game, your youth will not be wasted on you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Whoops, I'm having a problem getting to the next slide.
Is in
Whoops.
this movie.
Okay. So thank you. Sorry about that. There's always some little glitch. Yeah, so just really appreciate everybody's watching that, thinking about whether it's called retrograde analysis or thinking with the end in mind and starting from that, or working backwards. That's a lot of what implementation actually is, whether it's a conscious process or not. Thinking about, I want to implement this, I want to try this. There's always something either explicit or implicit that an outcome that is wanted. Usually around improving an experience, someone's experience of something, whether that's in our communities and the roads that people travel on, or all kinds of transportation, or something internally, a process at MnDOT, which is kind of the combination of people that we have here today are going to be talking about that. And at each of our webinars, our Innovation Hour webinars, we try to, actually yesterday, Michaela said, what are you going to have available for resources at the end? So that was her way of thinking backwards. What are the participants going to be able to learn from or have as a resource and a takeaway? One of those is something that we're going to talk about and share with you after the webinar, but it's the exercise of writing a press release. If you're thinking about implementing something, one of the ways that that has been commonly done in the business world and other sectors as well is by using a press release. It started a lot at Amazon. One of their CEOs talked about this idea of working backwards years ago. And they realized that when they gave their teams the opportunities to think about writing a press release for whatever implementation or innovation you wanted to work on or try, they had them start from writing a press release. So one of our resources today that we'll share after this with the slide deck, it has some of the elements about working backwards through this idea of a press release. And I invite you to try it. It's something that I've been thinking about in things that I want to pursue as well. So I'm finding it kind of an interesting exercise. But, you know, it's a very straightforward process. The press release elements, some kind of title. What would you, if you think about the end of your implementation or your innovation, what would you announce? What title would it be? Who would your end users be? Describing the problem that you set out to solve, and describing the solution statement. And usually it's, you know, when this exercise is done, it really encourages you to just take a few sentences on each one of these things just to start generating ideas. It may change. Your press release might look different as you work on an innovation, but you have some guideposts along the way because you've already started from the end. You're thinking about the end user experience you want to create. You're thinking about a solution, who's going to benefit from this. And one of my favorite things that I think is fun is just quotes from, if someone engaged with or experienced your innovation or implementation, what would you want them to say? You can think about that in terms of a consumer in the public. You can think about it as a coworker or someone who is announcing this at an agency or an organization. So, as I said, we'll be sharing a template of this that has a little bit more detail at the end of our webinar today, but just wanted to encourage you to think backwards from that place of a press release, of releasing something. Yeah. And that brings us into our panel presenters. So we are going to, as I said, hear from 3 individuals today who have a lot to share in their respective areas. And really, again, thank you to Ethan, Glenn, Tony, and John. And I am going to just turn it over right now to Ethan to be able to share with you about an implementation research project. And guess before I do that, I do want to say that our Office of Research and Innovation has an innovation or an implementation research pathway. So individuals can propose ideas to be implemented that meet certain criteria for a research project. If you would like to connect with me and learn more about that at any time, I'm happy to do that. And I think Taylor will be sharing a link to some of that. But the purpose today was really to not just share information about resources that are available on implementation through our Office of Research and Innovation, but also to showcase how implementation is happening within specialty offices, within individual workloads, something that's just kind of a common thread. So, Ethan, I am going to, thank you for presenting and turn it over to you to share.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Gary. And thanks for having me today. I'll try to steal the screen here. I think this is going to do it. Let me know if you see it.
Got it.
Look good?
You're good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'll get to introducing myself, but I wanted to give credit to the research team that put together this proposal presentation first. The U of M is going to be doing this, and it's with Nicole Morris, Curtis Craig, and Gordon Legg. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there, because you're going to see that it's just a U of M presentation. So, but I'll kick that off. I'm Ethan Peterson. I'm the state pavement marking and crashworthy engineer out of the CO Traffic. And this implementation research study is human factors optimizing crosswalks and aesthetic surface treatments, aka pavement art for pedestrians with disabilities. And we'll get through that. We might not know exactly what that is now, but we'll explain that as we move through. And I'll apologize right away. I'll probably try to move pretty quick. There's a lot of slides here. So this is what a decorative crosswalk looks like. And it's been prohibited for a long time, at least this type of version, by the FHWA, and they've opposed it for a while. The reasons being that the FHWA said that they're devoid of retroreflective pavement markings, not easy to see, diminish efficacy, yeah, I'm bad at saying that word, of transverse markings. It degrades contrast, potential for distraction from drivers and even pedestrians, lack of uniformity, and it can make the surface more slippery. But there is a pretty big demand from communities to install these crosswalk art, and I'm sure everybody has seen something kind of like this somewhere. Proponents of the colorful crosswalks really advocate for the use to promote placemaking, cultural celebration, and innovation, and we can all kind of understand why you'd want to beautify your community. So there is some support as a countermeasure, a safety countermeasure here. Bloomberg Philanthropics has taken a look at 17 of these art locations. I'll preface with saying these are all in urban core areas, and you can see some of the reductions that they see here, and that, I mean, this is pretty substantial. So these are ongoing, and we'll take a look. And as FHWA has created a new manual and uniform traffic control devices that will get adopted next year, they've opened up aesthetic surface treatments quite a bit more. So kind of just these parameters that they've set real quick, they can be used between transverse lines. There has to be area of contrast between the line and the aesthetic surface treatment. Textures can't confuse pedestrians with visual disabilities. Colors must be acceptable. They can't be within the confines of the traffic control device colors. Can't advertise or have retroreflectivity. Shouldn't encourage road users to interact with the pattern. And then some more guidance here. Just not to degrade the contrast markings, the gap, and then shouldn't contain pictographs, illustrations, or symbols. So that's kind of the parameters they've set coming up here, which opens it up quite a bit, and that's why we're going for this, right? They've had some FAQs that they've answered already, and jurisdictions will ultimately have the responsibility to ensure safety of road users where these are used, and they might cause potential for distraction, obscuring traffic control devices, and the likes. Um, and they also might encourage road users to interact directly with our work. And these are things yet to be studied as these things get used more and more. So if an agency decides to use this, the safe mobility and access navigation of all road users, including the ones with disabilities, should be a deciding factor. And that's kind of where we come up with this. There's really a limited amount of research on crosswalk markings for pedestrians with visual impairments, and we really need to understand that to implement that, right? What do we need for pedestrians with visual disabilities, and how can we accommodate them? Do these markings incorporate art, actually support these? I guess that's something that we really want to see. Does it obscure the meaning of a crosswalk to someone with visual disabilities? And then, yeah, I think that's really the big thing here. And also, does it make these pedestrians stop in a crosswalk to take a look at it? Does it change the speed at which they cross? These are all things that we really want to look at. So the research is pretty tough to kind of get a handle on, but we have seen some field study locations that are being proposed. The Little Earth community in Minneapolis, that is funded through Bloomberg, I believe, and that's going to go through. There's a St. Paul study, a St. Paul treatment that will also be going through that we'll be able to look at. And then also simulated visual impairment study. So we'll get a bunch of participants to look at a bunch of pictures and let us know what they think, what they see, and then also get some people into the lab to simulate these crosswalks with participants. And also at the end of this, hopefully make a recommendation for what we should really be using out there if we do this. So this just kind of highlights this proposed aesthetic surface treatment in that community. It's a bit mid-block marking. They're going to do curb extensions as well to limit the area that they'll have to cross in the roadway. And like I said, it's funded by the Bloomberg Foundation. So this is kind of what the online simulated visual impairment study will be. It'll explore a range of visual impairments. There are a lot, and their interaction with crosswalk markings. So just looking at the different types that they can have. And then the goals are to identify indicators for detection. So crosswalk markings, spatial frequencies, and the patterns that get used out there. So this is the kind of quick synopsis of the lab-based study. They'll refine the stimuli for further testing. So as you trim it down online, see what will work in person, and then recruit participants with those visual disabilities. Then they'll simulate these crosswalks that they picked, and then they'll measure the recognition, crossing intent, and crossing confidence. And then part 2 of the field study, they'll identify a couple more sites after the one that we've identified already. That one in St. Paul will likely be one of them. And then hopefully we'll be able to recommend best practices from our previous study results to get on these sites to a certain extent, and then repeat the field data collection, so yielding conflicts, time to cross, and interactions with the crosswalk. And then the overarching goal to make recommendations, they really want to provide MnDOT guidance about whether there are expected risks or benefits of aesthetic markings in these crosswalks, and then indicate which marking type is best integrated with aesthetic art, provide information on the use, durability, and risks of different aesthetic art materials, and then identify other risk groups that should be considered, such as cognitive impairments and neurodiversity. So I think that's a very quick synopsis of the project. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. This is my information. And I just want to say thanks again for attending and listening to this presentation.
Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, after each of our presenters, we are going to pause for some questions, if any. So I want to open it up. If anyone has questions for Ethan, that go ahead. Can either raise your hand or put them in the chat. I want to ask, going back to kind of our press release idea, Ethan,
Yeah.
as you think about a quote that someone, if you think about the end of the project, what is a quote that you would want one of the end users of this innovation to be able to say or to share?
Ultimately, that they feel safe with the thing that we pick, with the treatment that we pick, because we've gone through and went and looked at everything that we could put out there. So safety
Yeah.
is really the major issue here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a fascinating project. I'm looking forward to seeing what you learn, and really thank you again for the time that you've taken to share this implementation with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, and apologies, Ethan, for me not properly introducing you or fully introducing you, I should say. I
That's all
apologize.
right.
I feel like I know who you are in my mind and that should just translate, which is silly. So my
That's all
apologies.
right. No worries. No worries.
And we are going to continue with our second presentation, Glenn Gadbois. And Glenn is the MnDOT Transit Consulting Planning Program Coordinator in the Office of Transit and Active Transportation. And he will share with you a lot of the innovative work in contracting. So Glenn, I'm gonna, invite you to share and present.
Thank you. Can everybody see this slide? Good.
Yes.
So I have to say this before I start. Thank you, Carrie et al., for setting this up. Your introductory stuff was fascinating, and I appreciate getting to see that. And then I particularly appreciate Ethan's presentation. One of my favorite memories as a child was us going around painting our fire hydrants to have a community kind of identity. Um, and, and, um, and that kind of thing on crosswalks has been amazingly good at creating kind of community identity. But yes, it's also got to be safe for the users. So with that, I'm gonna let you know I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. And so this discussion is going to be about contracts, but it's about the opportunity created by MnDOT's consulting services and one particular version of contract that solves problems that I saw in my 20-something years of consulting, as well as now here with MnDOT. And in terms of the theme that is for the day, outcomes are something that I think we all ought to start with and focus on and think about as we're going forward. What do we want to do here? And I call it end users. I did just enough in technology to be dangerous, and I think of user definitions as a solid starting place for any design you do. And so these are some of the kind of user outcomes that we strove to design into our process as we move forward. I'm going to share this presentation, so if I go too quickly and you didn't get to read something, you'll get to see it after the fact. And in terms of this working backwards or retro vision, I actually think of it just the opposite as that, but it's the same thing. I start with that as the intention. That's my starting place. And so whether you call it human-centered design or anything else, putting that user and their needs and their interest in solutions up front is very helpful. And then just so you know, I also sort of developed this on an agile process or approach to things. Some people are not going to be able to have as much fluidity in their implementation as I did in this project. And we understand that. Some people have more rules. I think Ethan explained that nicely with his FHWA will allow kind of approach to the discussion. The thing I do want to help you understand is kind of what some of this looks like. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of detail, but very quickly. The consulting services has what they call a master contract. That master contract is basically a 4-page document, not counting all the terms that have to be in pretty much any contract these days. It is not a big deal, with 2 of those pages talking about the scope of work and the tasks. What you do after that is develop work orders for the work you want to do. And we did a wide range of work under this project. We do help assistance with policy, helping transit agencies to focus on what they have to do, provide rides. That's the service they can do that we can't. We ask a lot more from them than that. And so we've decided to get a consulting contract to help them with the part they may not have the capacity for, or that just is simply not as important as them giving rides. And so that is anything from development of policies to conceptual design and budget for facilities, to service planning, to financial planning, to technology. There's a wide range of services that we now provide by consulting services. They come to us, they say, I need. We then have a discovery with them. What do you really need, and how do we develop that into a work order? And then we get, once that's approved, we get moving on that work. That master contract allows us the flexibility to respond pretty easily to any requests that come in the door. Somebody may come in saying, oh, I've got a new project. I want help figuring out whether I should bring services in-house or continue with third-party contract. It's not something we considered when we started this project up, but that's something we're able to respond to, just figure out which category it goes into, which task, and make a task. What we've learned along the way is rather than divide those into tasks, work with consulting services to build one big omnibus task order so that all the work we do can be there, and then go in and build a more detailed work plan to allow you to describe to your consultants what work exactly you're approving for each project. So we've learned along the way. The other thing that we've learned along the way on is really involving your internal stakeholders is as important as involving your external stakeholders. Your internal stakeholders, whether they're procurement, whether they're contracts, whether they're specialists on facilities, whether they're the program managers working with the agencies, all of those have interests, business interests, and good advice, or at least the ability to raise issues that you need to really think through. That also gives everybody the opportunity to rethink processes. Things that we've done for years may be tired, old, and obsolete. Can we redo those? And then building in responsiveness. We've talked a little bit about that, but I can't emphasize this enough. The customer is primarily the end user, and they will bring to the table things you hadn't thought of initially. And your ability to respond to those in a positive way and help them arrive at solutions is something that is of great benefit if you can find a way to design into your contract and go forward that and use it. And so finally, to make sure I stay close to the time, we have 36 customers. We have done over 100 projects, running 30 to 40 projects at any given time. In basically 2 years, we've done 100 projects. And our rating from our customer has moved from when we started a 3.8, because there were things we need to work out, to a 4.7, which is almost a perfect 5, close to. And we've had, they're saying things that are important to hear from them about bringing expertise and resources we don't have, allowing us to focus on what we want. And so that's kind of confirmation of the design outcomes that we wanted to have. Those are our quotes at the end, if you will, to help everybody understand that we're actually meeting the objectives we sought out to achieve. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Glenn. Questions? Yes, and applause. Anyone have questions? I was interested in, Glenn, if you did such a great job of linking this concept of working backwards or the end user or agileness, but I'm wondering about like the range of what it takes and how long it takes to implement something obviously varies by project. And in your project area, in your work area, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about like when you thought when this innovation in contracting idea occurred and how long that actually took to implement. And I realize you're still implementing, but just to kind of go from that spark idea to, oh, we've got this going.
That's a great question, and it started before I arrived at MnDOT. So a supervisor had an idea, started having discussions over about a year's time with the transit agencies about how that might work. Developed in the second year an RFP, went out for RFP and got a contractor secured. But that's basically a year and a half to 2 years worth of the process. Then once that happened, it took us 3 to 5 months to set up everything we needed to set up to get to work. So we needed to figure out how we were going to do billing with a consultant. We needed to figure out how we were going to develop tasks, how we were going to do all of that sort of process stuff. And that's working internally with our folks. That's working with consulting services, and that's working with a contractor to get all of that worked out. Once that happened, we started running. And again, we agreed we didn't have to work out every little detail. We wanted to get started as quickly as we could, and it still took that long.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I thought you were, yeah, it is. I appreciate that the idea happened before you got there, because so often that's how innovation, these ideas that persist, and yet it takes just the right timing to get something started and the right combination of things, and appreciate the emphasis on the internal and the external.
Well, and so just a last note, one of the reasons it took us as long to get started as it did is because nobody on our side was very comfortable with the idea. I mean, he had worked a lot with external stakeholders, the end user, but he had not worked with the other user, the internal folks, and they were really concerned about what exactly would we allow the consultants to do, and where does it cross into my role and responsibility versus theirs, and how much definition. All of those things had to be worked out, and that takes time because people aren't always comfortable with change.
Yeah, usually not. It takes some time. Yeah, and I should mention that learning more about this project, I will share after our meeting a link to our innovation newsletter in which this work that Glenn has shared is featured as well. So thank you again. And we have one more presentation today. And this project is another research implementation project that was supported through our Office of Research and Innovation. And we have John McClellan here to talk about it. He is the Freeway Operations Supervisor at MnDOT, and he will be sharing a really important project on debris removal devices and lighting system on freeway incident response or first safety trucks. So John, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
All right,
thank you.
and you're seeing my title slide?
We sure are.
All right, awesome. Yeah, it's super interesting seeing the diversity of the different groups that are on here. It's really interesting. So this is more from the field side, so another different perspective from the other two that were out. I have so for a little bit of background, we're talking about the first trucks. So folks are listening in on the call are from the Metro. You see the first trucks driving around, responding to things. Tony Kasella, who was part of this project, he was a first driver several years ago and has now come back on the on the um, on the incident management side and on the TIM side, and then I've been in the dispatch side of first for my MnDOT career, 23 something years, and it's been interesting. Among other things, it's been interesting watching how the program has evolved over the last 23 years. So that's the core of it is the first trucks. So more specifically, and there we go. All right, so the first trucks freeway incident response safety team, they respond to incidents all day long, and we dispatch them to incidents. We're here at the RTMC. We have the traffic cameras. We're in the same big room as State Patrol dispatch. We're on the same computer system. Something happens on the freeway. Somebody calls 911. They get State Patrol. State Patrol puts it in the computer. State Patrol dispatches the troopers. We listen to the troopers get dispatched. We see it come up in the computer, and then between us and State Patrol, we use the traffic cameras to locate where the incident is, and is it exactly where everybody thinks it is, because a lot of times it's not, because the 911 caller is off by a half mile or farther, or kind of what the scale is or what it is that they think they saw. So we use the cameras to locate where things are. We put up the overhead message boards, and we dispatch the first trucks. So the first trucks respond to a whole variety of things all day long: stalled vehicles, crashes, things in the lane, things on the shoulder, fires, anything that you can imagine happening on the freeway system, and a lot of stuff you probably wouldn't even guess they've responded to. We've seen on the cameras, and we've directed them to respond to. So that also includes debris, which 15 minutes ago was a couple of Minneapolis cops out with a bumper in the center right lane of 94 with high speed 70, 80 mile an hour traffic, and they're trying to retrieve a bumper out of the center lane from the right shoulder. Not a little bit of a close call as we were watching that one. So first response to the debris. We also push vehicles. That is also part of the job, is pushing vehicles out of the lane. So it's not just a convenience thing. It's also, a lot of times, it's a life safety thing. If it's a stalled vehicle blocking a lane of traffic and it's free flow, they need to get it out of the lane as quickly as possible before anybody gets hit, including us. So what that means is that they need the push bumpers on the trucks. I mean, that's why we can't put a plow on the front of the pickup truck, because they need to be able to push vehicles as well. So the goal with this project was to implement a safer, number one, safer and more efficient way to get debris out of the traffic lane that kept the driver inside of the truck. So at least if they're inside the truck, they have some protection if they're inside the truck, as opposed to running around out there on foot and trying to get it. We put in a research proposal with MnDOT in late 2020 to move ahead with this project. And really, it wasn't, this all came out of Missouri DOT. Missouri DOT is pretty similar to Minnesota. Their program is pretty similar. It's state workers, pickup trucks. And they had two versions of a debris removal device. They had the JAWS device from Kansas City, which is a flat plate underneath the engine block, hinged at the back, and then metal ropes holding it up. And when you deploy it, it drops down, rubs on the, connects to the freeway, or it drops to the freeway. You can scoop stuff up into it. Or if it's something too big to fit underneath, you can raise the you can activate the motor and raise the cables up and grab onto it like a tree or something like that and drag it off to the shoulder. So that's JAWS, and JAWS is a cute name for it. It's a great name, but the acronym is Julie's Automated Waste System, and Julie is named after one of their drivers who was struck and killed in early 2000, like 2002, struck and killed trying to get debris. So that was what really kind of had this in the head of the Missouri folks, trying to come up with a safer way to do this to keep their folks safe. So they came up with that version in Kansas City. I think that came online roughly 2010, 2011. It was a little hard getting the exact details on it. St. Louis, in the St. Louis office of the program, came up with a little bit different version, which is a metal plate that, when it is not in use, is flush underneath the push bumper. Then when you activate it, you can see the piston comes down. It's a flat metal blade parallel with the pavement with some rubber on it, and that basically extends the bottom of the push bumper to make it into a kind of a little bit of a plow. And that one is Swiper, and yes, there is an acronym, and I don't remember what that acronym stand for. And yes, it did, I think, relate to Dora the Explorer, was also the comment that we got from the St. Louis person who came up with that one. During the process of trying to research these devices, it was just kind of coincidentally, this was kind of a hot topic amongst some of the other service patrols nationally. Pennsylvania Turnpike, and they had developed a contract with a company in the East Coast to come up, named JTech, to come up with something called Lane Blade, and that basically makes the entire push bumper be actuated so you can raise and lower the entire push bumper. And use it as a plow. Super cool. You can articulate it, the ends of it back. You can articulate it forward. Really neat, really awesome device. They drove it up here and we got a chance to play with it. Super cool. Problem is it is also very expensive. This was upwards of the 30,000 on up to 40,000 by the time this went through. And like, we just do not have the money for that in our little first program. Very cool device, but too much money for us. And then DOT, the Colorado DOT, they contract their program. Instead of having state workers do it, it's a contracted program, and their contractor is a company called Incident Clear. And then they came up with a device in the bottom right, which is metal blades that are, when it's not in use, it's up underneath the push bumper, and you deploy it, it comes down, makes contact with the ground, and makes a plow. Again, pretty cool device. So the initial research that we did, and this was, again, money we got from MnDOT late 2020. We got money, and I think it was like $100,000 is what we got. And the initial idea was that we were going to develop our own thing. We were going to we'd use that money, look at the 2 devices, the 3 devices that were out there. Could we develop something that would work for ourselves? We'd looked at that for a couple of months, and we were told, oh, wait, you can't do that with the research money. You can only buy stuff. So then that was, well, which of the devices do we get? And we had enough money to do 3 of them, to do the 2 Missouri ones and then the one from Colorado. There were other things that came up, like what the front axle weight was, and would that be a problem? The shortage of trucks, of course, in 2021, that there were no trucks available. In the 2022, stuff had to be bidded out because it was over 10,000. And then ultimately, would the drivers be confident that this would work? And also, some of the other stuff that was looked at is, could this be something that could be used outside of FIRST? Is this something that could be applied to maintenance? Is it something that could be put on a maintenance supervisor truck, something like that? Some of the other big questions, what was the weather going to be? What if it's 20 below zero? Is it going to work? If it's snowing, if it's thick, mushy snow? a lot of questions. Would this work or not? We also had enough money in this contract to be able to hire a consultant to help with the write-up for it and to also have a survey for the drivers. So we ended up purchasing purchasing 3 devices. One of these devices was relatively easy. We paid for it. They set it up here. We had a contractor install it. Not too bad, went through. Second device, we had to send the truck to them. They sent it back 5 minutes after we took it off the tow truck at our headquarters office and started the truck up. It started on fire. And fortunately, we had the supervisor was able to grab a fire extinguisher and put it out. Otherwise, we would have lost our brand new truck because the company had done a really poor job in wiring it, and the wires were basically laying right on the manifold. And then the third one of these was basically 6 months of bugging the company. Hey, when are we going to get it? When are we going to get it? And we were to the point of, do we need to drive down to Missouri and say, hey, we need this now, and forget it. Just give us our truck back. They were able to push through. Tony ended up finding the phone number for one of the owners and bugging them. And so we finally got all 3 of them out there. We did a survey for the first drivers because this was a big part of this too. A big part of the test is they all have laptops in the truck, and a survey monkey that the consultant had set up with 8 basic questions about, did it work? What did you think? So this gives you a much better idea of me trying to describe it, talk about this is what it looks like. There's some debris in the center, in the left lane there, South Highway 280. There's the first truck rolling up. And if you keep an eye on the front of his truck at the very bottom, underneath the push bumper, that is the swiper device being activated. And that was kind of the early version of it. We added in some little claws on the edge, but that's basically what he was able to retract. He was able to lower this device down, push the debris of the shoulder, didn't have to get out of the truck. Very quick, very efficient, and he's inside of the truck. So that's it. That's basically what we wanted. So a year plus in, so a year with 2 of the devices, a year and a half with 2 of the devices, a year with 1 of the devices. The Colorado one and the St. Louis one, pretty similar. And then the Kansas City one quite a bit lower. So good number of uses, 84% success rate. And this is rated by the drivers themselves. Did this work? Yes or no? And 84%. And that is higher than what I was even hoping for. I was thinking maybe it'd be 50%, something like that. So 84% was pretty good. And the 98% safe rating. So we had 2 who said it was somewhat unsafe, and we had 1 who said it was very unsafe out of 200 plus uses of it. And that was also super, super impressive to see this and how well, not only how well we thought it was, but how well the drivers themselves rated it at. And that's really matters. Is this useful for the drivers or not? So we judge the project as being a success. Positive remarks. There's some caveats, of course, could always be better. We added a few things to the St. Louis device, cameras and the little claws. And really at the end of it, it came down to the St. Louis device. Worked well. It worked the best. There was the least amount of drama. It did not catch on fire. We had it. The installation process is reasonably straightforward. And also, it was a third of the cost, which was super, like, at the end of the day, like the cherry on top of it. The fact that we could get enough money to put these on 10 of the trucks. So that's the implementation request money that we got was to, and this should be rolling forward in the next few months, is to get 10 of these, which would basically, as it rolls out, we get the entire fleet upgraded with this, which is super cool. Then the other thing that came up was the synchronized emergency lighting. So if anybody knows Brian Carey, he's now in charge at Tismo. That's a picture of him in front of a fire truck 20-something years ago, because this was a training program that we still do, trying to train emergency responders in how to make their scenes safer for the public and more effective for the public. And one of the issues that has been around for forever is the damn emergency lights are just so crazy and distracting and bright and blinding. And that's just gotten worse with LEDs. And this has been something we've been harping about for years, trying to get them to turn down the lights, turn off some of the lights. Well, the solution may be hopefully is on hand now through technology. And that is lighting that has a GPS chip in the emergency light, and that's how it basically allows them to be synchronized. So this is just there. You can see there's 4 or 5 squad cars there, and you can see how the lights are flashing in a synchronized manner, and that's the synchronized emergency lighting. And the different vendors for the emergency lights all have their own version of it, what they call it. MnDOT State Patrol uses one company, so the idea is to add the brain unit to our lights to be able to do that. And hopefully, the end of the day is that it will be a calmer, still visible, but a less distracting, less overwhelming light for the public as people drive by is really what the hope is. And we kind of have we think it's going to work. We think it's going to be useful. Just from what we see on the traffic cameras, it looks like it is going to be useful. So fingers crossed on that one. So money that was asked for was, again, enough to outfit 10 of the trucks, which will pretty much do the entire fleet with a debris device, and then upgrade the emergency lighting on the same 10 trucks to have the same thing, to have that ability to synchronize the lights. So, and if anybody is familiar with EDC 7 or with the Fed's EDC program, both of these items were on the ED7 list. So that's it for me. Thank you. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We do have a question in the chat and some comments. I want to share one. I know we're a hair over time, but thinking we can wrap up in a few minutes. A question, comment from Glenn, appreciate this life-saving program. And a question, is this resulting in incident report improvements, often off or on location info, and descriptions of incidents?
So we track the incident is tracking using State Patrol's CAD system. So we use State Patrol's computer system, and so we record there you have the time that the 911 call came in, the time the truck was dispatched to it, the time, and then we will enter in the time the lanes was cleared. So I think our tracking ability internally is pretty good already. I think the biggest thing is going to be the actual response, the actual lanes clearance time. The ability to get the lanes cleared should be faster with this, and also safer. So that's where I would see this coming in from. Hopefully that answered the question.
And just one follow-up that I will connect with you on a comment about that some of the videos would be wonderful to share with the STEM and youth outreach groups, which I think is a terrific idea if it hasn't been happening. But I can follow up with you after that. And thank you to Adrienne Bond for suggesting that. Other questions for John? And I want to recognize Tony in the wings because he's really been a part of that project as well. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our innovation hour. And as I said, I will follow up with, excuse me, some resources as well as the slide deck. I want to take just a few seconds to mention that our MnDOT through the interchange has an innovation portal. You've heard 3 innovative ideas here today that have gone through many different types of many phases, and our portal allows anyone at MnDOT to share an innovative idea, so that if you're looking for some support, if you have an idea in mind that you just need to know who to connect with, that is part of the service of our office. So I encourage you to explore that portal. You can contact me directly about that, as well as to learn more about our research implementation program. There will be a link to that as well in our chat. And please stay tuned. In the next couple of months, we'll be sharing some new possibilities around innovation for projects that we've been working on through our office. So again, I really thank everyone for taking the time to join us today, and just appreciate the extra time as well. And feel free to follow up and contact me with any questions. Yeah. And I will share that slide in just a sec. You can reach me in the Office of Research and Innovation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Have a great rest of your afternoon.